everybody, I'm Allie Buchman with the Potomac Bead Company, and I am going to be working with the kite beads for you here in this, what I'm calling my Dutch Blitz necklace. It reminds me of kind of the Dutch hex signs that you see. I'm from the Lancaster County area with the kind of Amish signs, and it reminds me of that Pennsylvania Dutch kind of look to it. So I'm calling it the Dutch Blitz necklace, and it is going to be working with some kite beads. So you may not know what kite beads are. I didn't until they came out a couple weeks ago. And these kite beads are a 2-hole bead that are 9 by 5 millimeter, which 5 millimeter is about the width of a diamond duo, and 9 millimeters is just a little bit longer. You can see it's kite shaped, so it's longer at one end and shorter at the top. We're going to use these in pretty much their most kind of organic form, working with them going from the inside first, going from that inside kind of floral design and working our way out. If you need any of the materials to do this Dutch Blitz necklace, you can go to the bottom of the screen here to the video date, which says when it was produced and the details about it. Hit that little show more button. It'll give you links to purchase the different products from me online. You can also go to the top of the video. There's usually a little eye there, and the little eye is information from us, the video creators. Check that out, and that'll give you a link to some of the different materials that are used in this as well. So the necklace itself is going to be made, like I said, with the kite beads. Here I use the jade color of kite beads as well as the metallic purple iris. I'm going to be using the metallic purple iris again, but I'm making a softer version using the white champagne. Depending on what color of the kite bead you want, you can do one color, and in that case you'll need 16 of that color, or you can do 2 colors, and you'll need 8 of each of the colors. So I have 8 of my metallic mix here, and then I have 8 of the champagne that I will dump out as well. In addition to the kite beads, we also have some 4 millimeter beads. Here I have the 4 millimeter matte reconstituted gemstones. So we have these in a number of different colors, aquamarine and some black and crystal and different quartz colors, and they are a matted bead. I'm going to be using some faceted 4 millimeter rounds, and these are the faceted citrine beads in the 4 millimeter rounds. For that, you're going to need 8 of those for the actual pendant design, 9 if you want to stick one in the middle, depending on what you want to do, and then more if you want to do the chain along with me. It's up to you whether or not you want to do the chain or you want to make this into a pendant. That's kind of, like I said, up to you. I will be showing you how I make it into an actual chain and an actual necklace. For that, if you do want to make it into a necklace, you just need a simple clasp for the end of the design. It's also going to be using some Miyuki seed beads in 15O, and I'm using the galvanized yellow gold color of the 15O. And also another color that would look pretty is the champagne color too. So you can kind of pick those. In addition to the kites, the 15s, and your 4 millimeter, we have some O beads here. In the design, I use the copper color, the vintage copper, and in ours, I'm going to be using the Crystal Capri Gold Fool, which is a nice bright copper versus the vintage copper, which is more of a matte color. I want to get that mixed metallic kind of look and that richness going on. To create the pendant, you are going to need about 3 feet of beading thread. If you want to continue on, go ahead and start with a size 10 needle or a 12, that's up to you, and about 5 feet of thread. The thread that I will be working with is some white wildfire thread, and I'm using 0.006 wildfire beading thread, again in that white color. I also have handy a thread burner or a thread zap. I burn the end of the threads as I'm working with them, as well as burning the thread off the spool. I then take a needle nose pliers or a nice heavy duty kind of tweezers, flatten out the end of the thread. That's going to make it easier for you to actually thread your needle. When I'm deciding what color thread to use, I kind of think about where the knot is going to be in the project and if I'm going to see it. Here on the project that I did, I used the jade color. So I used green thread because I knew that the knot was going to be near the jade. I'm using the white thread because my knot is going to be near my champagne. So that's kind of how I determined what color thread I want to work with. In addition to all of your supplies, you also want a nice working surface. I have a nice white bead mat here that I'm working on. I also use my bead on it board as kind of I walk to different areas. And if you want, some people like to actually glue their knots. In that case, I would recommend this Super New Glue. Nice inexpensive little bottle, lasts forever, and that will work to secure your knots. We're going to be working on the pendant first, and then we're going to go ahead and work on the actual necklace portion of the design. I'm going to get 5 feet of beading thread onto my white thread and get the needle attached, and we'll get ready to actually do the design. Again, go ahead for now and just get out 8 of each of your type of beads here. Grab 16 of your O beads and then a little pile of your 15 O's. So I have the thread and needle onto my project right now, and what I'm going to do is just hold the end of my thread. The intersection of my Dutch Blitz design is going to be my champagne color. I'm going to be picking up 8 of my champagne kite beads, and I'm picking them up through the long end of the actual kite portion. So when I'm looking at it, I'm picking up them through that longer end. 1, 2, 3, 4, let them shift down a little bit, 5, 6, and we have our 7th there, and I need my 8th out, 7, 8. So I have my 8 beads there. They're on the thread, and I'm just holding the thread again at the end. While I'm holding the thread at the end, I am going to tie a knot because we're going to make this into a circle. So I'm going to hold the end here, give myself about 2 to 3 inches at the end of the thread, and simply tie a knot. Tie another knot over top, and give a nice tight pull. From there, you're going to have your central design there. And it's a little bit hard to see the cream on the white. Go ahead and take your needle and thread then. Go back through the first kite bead, pulling your thread away from that knot. From there, I'm going to go from the bottom hole or the inner hole of that kite bead to the outer hole of the kite bead. It's going to reverse the thread, so the thread's going to sit a little bit on the side there, you can see it, and you're going from the bottom hole or the innermost hole to the outer hole of that kite bead. From there, we're done with the champagne colored kite beads. I'm going to kind of move them off to the side here, and then I'm going to get ready with my iris gold ones. Before each of the iris gold beads, I'm going to add a 15O. I'm also going to add a 15O after. This time when I pick up the kite beads, I'm going to be picking them up through the wider portion of the kite bead, or through the top of the kite. I'm going to go a 15O, a kite bead, 15O, and I'm going to add in these 8 kites in the opposite color, sewing after adding the kite bead into the next of the champagne kites through the outer hole. Give a nice tight pull, and that'll drop that little next petal in there. From there, continue adding your kite beads with a 15O on either end and sewing into the next kite bead. Pull all that nice long piece of thread through, and we're going the whole way around. 15, kite 15, through the kite from the baseline. So as I go around here, I'm just adding that second one in. I like to hold my projects rather than lay them down. I usually lay them down for you guys so it's easier for you to see as we create together, rather than actually holding it and having a portion in my hand being held. But I'm going to hold this one as we kind of work our way around. One thing with any 2-hold project or 2-hold bead, you want to make sure that all of your beads have a second hole. Because this one isn't that detailed, it's not a bummer if you get to the end here and you have to take off a couple beads. Also, this design, the beads are fairly large, so you don't have to worry too much about that. But if you get done a big design and you realize that second hole is clogged, you may want to get a Toho bead reamer. That is the beading awl in the green or the pink color. Those are kind of a lifesaver to get the coating, which is usually what is blocking the second hole out. From here we have our second row of our kite beads on that are facing in the opposite direction of our first beads. From here, my thread and needle is coming out through my first kite bead, which has the thread going from the base to the top. I'm going to go through the 15-0 and the kite bead that I added on this second go round when I was adding the purple iris. Give a nice tight pull, and we're going to reverse or step up by reversing the thread through this outer kite bead now. Again, you're going to see a little bit of the thread on the side here. Let me get my tail out of the way. But you're not going to see it too much at all as you go around and add our next portion of the design. The next portion of the design you can really play with and kind of have fun creating, because it's just about a 11mm space. So that's up to you what you want to add in there. I'm going to add, just like I did with this previous design, except this time, instead of adding the O beads right after the kite, I'm going to add the O beads right next to my citrine. So my pattern is going to be 2 15s, then an O bead, then my citrine, then an O bead, and then 2 15s. On the previous design, I did O bead, then 2 15s, 4mm, 2 15s, O bead. So the last design, the O beads were right next to the kites. This time as I go around, I'm going to put them right next to my 4mm faceted round. And pull them in. Continuing on, you're going to go through the second hole, or the outer hole, the base of the kite, adding in your design in that same pattern 8 times. So this is why I said you need 16, at least 16 of your O beads. Then if you want to do the chain with me, you're going to need a couple more, obviously. But I'm going to work around the design here, adding in my citrine beads with the O beads on the side and those 2 15s. Once you've worked the whole way around the pendant, we'll kind of come back together them and work in the rest of the design. So as I add in the last of my beads here, I'm going through that first kite bead and adding in my final citrine bead. I have the thread there on the inner edge. If you want to do a actual bail, I would suggest doing it right here. Going out with your 15-0s, about 5 of them high, making a loop out of them about 20 long, 5 more, and go through and kind of reinforce that. So you'd have a triangle with 5 on each side, a loop of 20, and then 5 on each side. If you want to follow along with me to actually do the center, so you can have it plain like this, like we just did, I'm going to do a little design in the center, and then you can come up and follow along with the side beads. Enough thread is there to do so. To get back down to the middle, I'm going to go from the outer, or the top hole of that kite bead to the opposite hole, working my way in, going through the seed bead, and then that champagne color kite. So I'm downgrading, or I'm stepping down from the outer holes to the inner holes of the project. When you're through an inner hole here, you can decide what you want to do in the middle. In the middle here of the actual designed piece, I did a O bead with a 2mm bead, a true 2 on top. I didn't want you to have a ton of those beads available because you just need one. So you really can use anything. Any 11-0 will keep that O bead in place. I'm actually going to put the O bead down and then do a little picot trim with my 15-0s. So I'm coming out of the center hole of one of those kite beads. I'm going to add 2 3 15s, add my O bead in that same Capri Gold color, add 3 of my 11-0s, or I'm sorry, my 15-0s rather. I'm going to go back through that Capri Gold and pull nice and tight. That's going to create that little picot trim, which is going to hold that capri gold in there. If you do one seed bead, the 15-0, sometimes they can slip out with the O bead. So you want to use an 11-0. A lot of times they won't fit through there, but just to be on the safe side. After the little picot trim, 3 more 11s get put on. And I'm going to take my threaded needle to the opposite side of the project, going through the opposite kite bead. So you're coming out here on this kite bead. I'm going diagonal through to the opposite kite bead and through the innermost hole. So basically from one side to the other. And that is going to decorate that there. Coming out then of that kite bead, add 3 more seed beads of your 15s. So up through the O bead, making sure there's not a ton of extra thread exposed. Sew through, your little picot trim here, which is going to be those 3 beads at the top, holding them in place. So we're basically reinforcing that little center stone, if you want to call it that. Coming down the opposite side then, going through the O bead and coming out. Again, give a nice tight pull, tighten up those threads. 3 more 15s get added. And you're coming to the opposite side of the kite bead that the thread is coming out of. And sew in through that. That's going to put those 3 beads there on the end. So you can see that little kind of hex shape there, that little X, which is going to hold that capri gold in place. Depending on kind of how you want that little X to be displayed is going to be where you start your actual necklace portion or where you do your bail. I'm going to have it sit side to side there. I'm going to work my thread so that it's coming out here right on the side of one of the kite beads that are to the top, towards the top of the project. I'm going to have 2 empty kites at the top, as well as the empty seed bead, or the empty 4mm bead, and my threaded needle are going to come out right after my kite bead, and I'll get ready to start my strand for my actual design of my necklace. Because I'm closer to over here, it doesn't really matter which direction you go, but you're going to work your way to the outer edge here, going through one of the kite beads again, stepping up, which is stepping from the inner section towards the outer section, exposing just a tiny bit of thread on the side, going out then of your kite bead on the inner and working your way towards the outer kite bead. So again, I want to keep that X kind of to the side like that. So I'm working my way around here to the very end. When I flip the project over up here, I'm out one of the side kites, but it's not the X. So I want to make it so I'm the whole way up so that's the X formation. And like I said, it's up to you whether or not you care where that kind of center formation is actually sitting. And you may have already decided that you wanted to do a bail and not have the beaded chain, so that's up to you as well. I'm going to take it up so I'm coming out one of those side kites. And we'll reevaluate where we're holding it. So I have it out here, so there's my X of my design here, and I have it coming out one of the 2 kite beads that are to the sides of the X. So you're kind of having it there, which is going to leave you 2 kite beads at the top. From there, we are going to add 10 of our seed beads. Get out a little pile of your O beads, more seed beads, and more of your actual 4mm. We're going to do a whole chain here with a pattern design of 10 seed beads in between our O beads and our 4mm. You can make that chain design as long as you want. I'm going to get a couple O beads out, start the chain for you guys, and then show you how we're going to make it. So we're coming out of that kite bead there. I'm going to add 10 of my 15 O's. So that's going to put 10 on the needle. And once I have 10 beads on, push it down next to the project. These 10 beads are going to sit right over top of the actual bead itself when we get to it. So as we come back down the project, we'll go ahead and we'll be coming out of the seed bead or the O bead that we're about to put on and going to that top of the kite. So that's kind of how we connect it. But right now you're going to put on an O bead, citrine, O bead, and let that fall next to the design. From here, for my project, I'm going to do about 8.5 inches of just the repeat here with 10 seed beads on the needle, and then your O bead, 4 O bead. So go ahead and do this for approximately 8.5 inches if you want your necklace to be about 17 inches if you want it to be a shorter one. If you want it longer, you're going to basically take it in half. So say you want it to be 20 inches, you're going to do 10, you're going to do it in half, so you have 10, and you're just going to subtract half an inch. So you're going to make about 9.5 inches of your actual cording. So go ahead and complete the actual chain design here, and we'll come back as we get to the end. I'll show you how to do the clasp and how we're going to reinforce it, come back and do our little Y here and get to the other side. So as we work on the project more and you get to the actual end of the design here, so I have my 8 inches so of the chain. I have on it 5 seed beads here. I'm going to put my 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 seed beads, just like I've been doing with the pattern, 10 seed beads and then O bead, citrine, 10 seed beads. Going up through the clasp, which is just a barrel clasp, and it's a clasp garden clasp. I'm going to go back down through the seed beads here. And basically reinforce the whole entire thing. So I'm going to reinforce going back through the entire project, reinforcing the whole line. So you're going to take your thread and needle back through the whole line, whether or not yours is 8.5 inches or yours is 10 inches or 9 inches or whatever length you wanted to make it. Literally, I'm sewing back through all of the beads that I did, going back now towards the center of the necklace, which is going to be your pendant. And this puts 2 strands of thread through all of these beads. I'm going to go through this line all the way back. Once we come out the center line then, here, right back at the start of the project, kind of hold your beads there in place usually, kind of twirl them around, making sure that your thread and needle are going back through all of them and that you're not missing any beads. If you do miss beads, they kind of stick out on the side. I'll try to make them as even as possible, and that's going to get you through those beads faster. So I usually try to get through all of my seed beads in one long line and come out an O bead or a gemstone. As we come out the last of our O beads here, what I'm going to do is get ready and make my little linking there. To make my link, I'm going to add 10 more seed beads, just like I did on the other side coming out. So you're coming out your last O bead. You're going to add 10 seed beads. And you're going to sew across the citrine beads over to the next kite bead. So your thread is going to come out. You can see that nice look then. The thread comes out a kite. You go the whole way up, make your chain, come back down and go into the next kite. From there, I'm going to go through the next section here of citrine and O beads right along that last row of my kite beads. Go through the kite and come on out. From there, I'm going to start the next portion of my rope here, going through and adding in my 10 seed beads, all of my design with the O beads and the citrine, and then come back down, and we're going to actually create that V again, sewing into the next of our kite beads. So I'm to the end of the actual necklace here and the end of this side of the chain. And I'm just going to go into the project here, add 10 more seed beads here to get to the barrel clasp. Because whenever I do, I usually like to make it pretty consistent, even at the clasp end. Go through the barrel clasp at the end. If you want, you can disconnect it, that's up to you too. And then same deal, going back down through that whole project, back towards the end. When we're back down through the whole project also, we will make sure as we come back down here to pull any extra thread so we don't have any extra thread exposed. So you can see kind of that extra thread there. I'm going to give a nice tight pull, make sure none of that is exposed, and keep going down the line. As you go through again, if you can make the beads lay straight, all those seed beads, each section, and just do a section at a time, or two, you can make it go pretty quickly, sewing back through and down the line. This is one of the reasons that I also started with that 5 feet of thread, was to be able to do this whole necklace without having to add thread. Again, if you want to, and you could have just made it a pendant, you wouldn't have needed as much thread because you're just going to come down the line at the very, very outer edge and make a little pendant loop off of it. From here, I'm going down again to that first gemstone that I added, which means I'm going to come out my last O bead in the design. And from the last O bead in the design, I'll make that little Y section. I'm almost there. Going through the last 10 seed beads here and coming out the last O bead. When I'm out the last O bead, you can lay down your project so you can kind of refresh yourself if you need to know exactly where it needs to be. It's going to go from the topmost kite here to the side kite. So again, 10 beads go on, just kind of keeping it in that pattern. There's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And from there, you're going to skip over the seed beads and your citrine bead and sew through the next kite. That's going to make that nice Y there, and then your pendant will hang nicely for your necklace. So you kind of have that whole thing then. It's hard to always keep the whole thing on film when it's a necklace. From here, you get to actually finish off the necklace. And to do so, I'm just going to go around the outer edge a little bit and kind of reinforce that outer edge. Going through the seed beads, citrine and the seed beads. And then I'm going to work my way in towards the inner of the project. Going through the kite beads there, making sure I'm not getting caught on any seed beads. I don't want to see as much thread there. And I'm working my way in towards that initial thread. So that original thread, I'm stepping down from the kite bead. I'm going to have my thread and needle come out the back of the project. From there, you want to make sure you're not connected at all. Come out the back, and I'm going to sew my thread and needle around this baseline the whole way till I get to my original starting thread. From there, I get to end it really easily by just tying a knot. So I'm just sewing through that center line along the back. If you want your necklace to be the same on both sides, you can also add your O bead and your little design on the front here of the kite beads, or you can keep it blank so that way you can reverse it and it looks different. When you get the thread ends together, you're simply going to tie a knot right over left, then left over right, or switch hands. Taking my thread off my needle, I'm going to do my final 2 knots here. And I do it on the back and almost pull the thread towards the back so that way the knots are on the back side. From there, if you want, you can grab your super glue, do a dab of glue, or and or grab your thread burner here, burn down the edges then, making them into a nice little balled up section, and making sure that you're not sewing through any thread. Nothing is as sad as when your thread burner goes awry and by accident you sew through the actual thread that you created with, and then you have to think that you're done, but you're not really, because you got to start over. So there is the end of the Dutch Blitz necklace. You can see the fun different kind of design elements with the different colors. Have fun creating and working with these kite beads, making a nice, simple yet elegant necklace. You can also treat these as components, linking them together then into a larger design and linking and creating more of these components rather than just making a chain. If you do need any of these materials, again, at the beginning of the video, I kind of listed them out for you. Underneath the video, there's that little tag that says when the video was created, and that little show more drop down button. You can click on that and get the products as well. You can also go to the little information or the little I in the beginning of the video at that top right hand corner. If you want to, again, you can purchase from me at PotomacBeads.com. Check out these new kite beads, whether or not you need some of the gemstone beads and O beads as well. We have them all for you. You can also stay connected with us by subscribing to this YouTube channel. You get regular updates then on the different videos that we create, as well as new product updates and really what's going on kind of in the beading world as a whole. You can also stay connected with us even more if you can't get enough through Facebook and through Pinterest, as well as join our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. If you join the Beading and Jewelry Making Facebook group, you get a really great appreciation for all the different designs that people do, the creativity that goes into it. People are super friendly and helpful at answering questions if you have them and kind of pointing you in the right direction. As always, everybody, thank you so much for watching this Dutch Blitz necklace, and have fun creating and playing around with these brand new kite beads.